My name is Michael, and I'm the guy who always shows up, no questions asked. But at my brother's wedding, I learned a truth that cut deeper than I expected. My family didn't just take me for granted, they wanted me to feel like I didn't matter. I'd driven hours to a glittering Denver hotel, pressed my best suit, and steeled myself to be the supportive big brother. I imagined clinking glasses, maybe sharing a laugh with my parents, and celebrating Ryan's big day. But the moment I stepped inside, a chill ran through me, like the air was whispering that something was about to go terribly wrong. The ballroom was a spectacle, chandeliers shimmering like stars, tables draped in ivory silk, and rose centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The air buzzed with the kind of excitement only a high-budget wedding could muster, every detail screaming money and status. I adjusted my tie, smoothed my jacket, and tried to shake off the unease. This wasn't about me, it was about Ryan, my younger brother, the golden child who always landed on his feet, no matter how many times he tripped. I'd parked my battered pickup in the hotel lot, a sore thumb among sleek SUVs and sports cars. Crossing the marble lobby, I caught my reflection in a gilded mirror, tired eyes, a forced smile, a man who'd spent years putting family first, even when they barely noticed. I told myself to focus. I was here for Ryan, to smile for the photos, to be the brother I'd always been. But deep down, I knew old wounds don't stay buried forever. At the check-in table, a young woman in a crisp blazer flashed a practiced smile. "Name?" she asked, her fingers poised over a tablet. "Michael Hathaway," I said, keeping my voice steady. Her smile faltered, just a flicker, as she scanned the list. My stomach tightened. I'd seen that look before, pity, or maybe unease. "Here you are," she said, handing me a small card with my name and a table number, 17. She gestured toward the far side of the ballroom. "Your table's over there, near the service entrance." I frowned, glancing at the card. "Service entrance?" She nodded, her smile tightening. "Yes, sir? Just past the main tables." I looked at the seating chart on an easel nearby. My parents, Vivian and Harold Hathaway, were at table 1, front and center with Ryan and his fiancée, Emily. Ryan's friends, distant cousins, even his old college roommate's new girlfriend, had seats in the heart of the ballroom. My name was scrawled in a corner of the chart, next to table 17, like an afterthought. I forced a nod and walked toward the ballroom, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses growing louder. The service entrance was a narrow door by the kitchen, where waitstaff darted in and out with trays of canapes. Table 17 sat in its shadow, a small, wobbly round table with a stained tablecloth and mismatched chairs. It wasn't set for guests. It was for overflow, for people who didn't quite belong. I stood there, the card in my hand heavier than it should have been, and realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate message. My first instinct was to brush it off. I'd spent years swallowing slights like this. My parents praising Ryan's every move while skimming over mine. Ryan borrowing money he never repaid. Family gatherings revolving around his stories. But this was different. This was public, intentional, a slap in the face in front of 200 strangers. I turned the card over, tracing my name in elegant cursive, and felt a slow burn in my chest. I wasn't just overlooked. I was erased. I scanned the room for my mother. Vivian was near the head table, fussing over Ryan's boutonniere, her face glowing with pride. Ryan stood beside her, grinning in his tailored tux, every inch the charming groom. Emily, his fiancée, was chatting with her parents, George and Linda, who exuded quiet wealth in their understated designer clothes. I weaved through the crowd, ignoring the curious glances from guests who probably wondered why I was lingering near the kitchen. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice low but firm, "can I talk to you for a second?" Vivian barely looked up, her hands still adjusting Ryan's collar. "Michael, now's not the time. Can't you see we're busy?" I clenched my jaw, forcing calm. "It'll only take a moment. It's about my seat." She sighed, the exasperated sigh I'd heard my whole life, and finally turned to me. "What about it?" I held up the card. "I'm at table 17 by the kitchen with the waitstaff." Her eyes flicked to the card, then back to Ryan, as if I were interrupting something far more important. "We had to prioritize the immediate family, Michael. Don't make a big deal out of it." I blinked, the words hitting like a punch. "Immediate family? I'm his brother." Vivian waved a hand dismissively. "You know what I mean. It's Ryan's day. Let's not spoil it." Before I could respond, Ryan caught my eye and sauntered over, his grin sharp. "What's up, Mike? Trouble in paradise?" His tone was light, but there was an edge to it, the same edge he used when he wanted to remind me of my place. "My seat's by the kitchen," I said, holding his gaze. "You know anything about that?" He chuckled, shrugging. "Wedding planning's a mess, man. Don't take it personally. Not everyone can sit up front." I turned to my father, Harold, who was hovering nearby, nursing a whiskey. "Dad, you okay with this?" He glanced at me, then away, his voice flat. "It's just a seat, Michael. Don't ruin the mood." I stood there, surrounded by the laughter and music of a celebration I was clearly not part of, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about a table. This was about years of being pushed aside, of being the one who showed up, paid up, and shut up. Emily's parents, George and Linda, were watching from a distance, their expressions unreadable. I'd met them once before at a family dinner where Ryan had dominated the conversation with tales of his business ventures. They'd been polite but reserved, their eyes lingering on Ryan as if trying to see through his charm. Now, as I stood there, Linda caught my gaze and offered a small, sympathetic nod. I didn't know what it meant, but it felt like a lifeline, a reminder that not everyone in this room was blind to what was happening. Ryan clapped a hand on my shoulder, his grip a little too tight. "Come on, Mike. Grab a drink. Enjoy the party. You're here, aren't you?" His words were smooth, but his eyes gleamed with something else, amusement maybe, or triumph. I pulled away, my mind racing. I could sit at that pathetic table, smile through the toasts, and pretend everything was fine. I'd done it before. But as I looked at my family, Vivian fussing over Ryan, Harold avoiding my gaze, Ryan smirking like he'd already won, I realized I was done pretending. I turned back toward table 17, the clatter of dishes and the hum of the kitchen a stark contrast to the elegance of the ballroom. The card in my hand felt like a weight, a symbol of everything I'd let slide for too long. I set it down on a nearby tray, slowly, deliberately, and walked toward the exit. My footsteps echoed in my ears, each one louder than the music fading behind me. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to sit where they told me to anymore. As I reached the lobby, I nearly collided with my Aunt Karen, my father's sister, who was adjusting her shawl by the coat rack. She took one look at my face and frowned. "Michael, what's wrong?" Her voice was warm, steady, the kind that always made me feel seen. I hesitated, then told her about the table, the conversation, the way my family had dismissed me. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. "They did that to you?" she said, her voice low with anger. "Don't you worry, Michael. I'll make sure they regret it." I shook my head, already halfway out the door. "I just need to go, Aunt Karen." She grabbed my arm, her grip firm but gentle. "You don't have to stay, but you don't have to fight this alone either. I've seen how they treat you. It ends tonight." I didn't know what she meant, but the fire in her eyes told me she wasn't bluffing. I nodded, stepped into the cool night air, and let the door swing shut behind me. The city lights stretched out before me, a promise of something new, something mine. But as I climbed into my truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. "What's the hardest family moment you've ever faced? I'd love to hear your story." The ballroom's glow felt like a taunt as I stood in the lobby, my family's dismissal burning in my chest. I'd left table 17 behind, but my mother's wave, Ryan's smirk, and my father's apathy clung to me. I wanted to leave, to drive into the night and never look back. But Aunt Karen's words, "It ends tonight," echoed, urging me to stay and face this. I slipped back into the ballroom, keeping to the shadows. The celebration roared on, guests orbiting Ryan and Emily as cameras flashed. Ryan was all charm, his laughter cutting through the music, but Emily's smile was strained, her eyes flicking to her parents, George and Linda, who watched with guarded expressions. Something was off, and I wasn't the only one who felt it. I found my mother at the bar sipping a martini. "Mom, we need to talk," I said, my voice low but sharp. Vivian sighed, barely glancing at me. "Michael, stop making a scene. It's Ryan's day." Her words stung, but I pressed on. "Why am I sitting by the kitchen while Ryan's friends get better seats?" She set her glass down, lips pursed. "We prioritized important guests. Don't be selfish." "Selfish?" I echoed, my voice rising. "I'm his brother." Before she could respond, Ryan appeared, bourbon in hand, his grin razor-edged. "Mike, still whining about that table? Let it go." I stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "Did you know about this, Ryan?" He shrugged, sipping his drink. "Emily's folks handled the seating. Take it up with them." I glanced at George and Linda, now whispering near the head table. They didn't seem like the type to snub anyone deliberately. Ryan was lying, and I could feel it. "You had a say, didn't you?" I pressed. His smile faltered, his fingers tightening around his glass. You're paranoid, Mike. Enjoy the party. My father's voice cut in, weary and final. Michael, enough. Harold stood behind me, whiskey in hand, eyes avoiding mine. Sit down or leave. His indifference hit harder than any insult. I looked from him to Vivian, then Ryan, their faces a wall of dismissal. I felt like I was shrinking, but I refused to break. Aunt Karen's gaze caught mine from across the room, steady and fierce. She'd promised they'd regret this, and I clung to that. Fine, I said, voice cold. I'm done, for now. Ryan's smirk returned, but I wasn't finished. I moved to a corner, pulling out my phone to scroll through old texts from Ryan. One stood out, sent weeks ago. Big things coming, Mike, gonna be set for life. I'd thought he meant his engagement. Now it felt like a lie. Months ago, Ryan had borrowed $5,000 from me, claiming he was in a bind. He never paid it back. Watching him now, charming Emily's parents, I wondered what else he was hiding. George and Linda's whispers grew tense, Linda's eyes narrowing at Ryan. They saw something I didn't, and it fueled my resolve. Ryan called for a toast, his arm around Emily, his words dripping with charm. But Emily's smile wavered, her fingers clutching her glass. George and Linda didn't clap, their faces stone. The cracks in Ryan's perfect facade were showing, and I wasn't the only one noticing. Aunt Karen appeared beside me, her voice low. You stayed, I nodded. Not for them, for me. She scanned the room, eyes sharp. Keep watching, Michael. This isn't just about you. Her words sent a chill through me, hinting at secrets I was only beginning to uncover. What's the worst lie you've caught someone in? I'd love to know. The ballroom's music faded to a dull hum. As I stood in the shadows, Aunt Karen's warning, this isn't just about you, ringing in my ears. Ryan's toast had ended, the crowd's applause masking the cracks I'd seen in Emily's smile, in her parents' stony faces. I'd stayed not for my family's sake, but for mine. I needed to know why this wedding, this moment, felt like a carefully staged lie. I moved toward the exit, my resolve hardening. Ryan's lies, his unpaid loan, his cryptic text about being set for life, gnawed at me. I couldn't confront him again, not with my parents circling like hawks ready to shut me down, but I wasn't leaving without answers. As I passed the head table, I caught Linda's eye. Emily's mother was watching Ryan, her expression a mix of suspicion and unease. She knew something, and I needed to know what. Outside, the night air was sharp, cutting through the fog in my head. I leaned against my truck, scrolling through my phone for more clues. Ryan's texts were vague, but one email from months ago stopped me cold. He'd sent it late at night asking for another loan. I'm in deep, Mike, just need a little help to get clear. I'd ignored it, tired of bailing him out. Now I regretted not pushing harder. What was he hiding? A voice broke my thoughts. Michael. Aunt Karen stood at the hotel entrance, her shawl pulled tight against the chill. You're still here. Her eyes searched mine, sharp and knowing. I nodded, pocketing my phone. I can't let this go, Karen. Something's wrong with Ryan. She stepped closer, her voice low. I've known that for years, but it's worse than you think. She glanced back at the ballroom, then pulled out her phone. Look at this. She showed me a screenshot, an email from a debt collector addressed to Ryan demanding $120,000. My stomach dropped. Where'd you get this? I asked. A friend who works at his bank, she said. Ryan's been dodging creditors for months, and I overheard him last week talking to someone about Emily's family money. He's not marrying her for love. The words hit like a fist. Ryan, my reckless brother, wasn't just in debt. He was scheming to use Emily to escape it. I thought of her strained smile, her parents' whispers. They were starting to see through him, but they didn't know the half of it. What do we do? I asked, my voice tight. Karen's eyes gleamed with resolve. We tell the truth. But not here, not now. Tomorrow, at the post-wedding brunch. Everyone will be there. I shook my head, the weight of it overwhelming. They'll hate me for this. Mom and Dad already think I'm the problem. Karen gripped my arm, her voice fierce. They've been wrong about you your whole life, Michael. You're not the problem. You're the one who's always held this family together. It's time they see that. Her words struck a chord, stirring something I'd buried under years of duty. I'd always been the fixer, the one who paid Ryan's debts, who showed up when no one else did. But for what? To be shoved to a table by the kitchen? I looked at Karen, her face etched with determination, and made my choice. Okay, I said, tomorrow. I drove home, the city lights blurring past, my mind racing. Ryan's betrayal wasn't just about me. It was about Emily, her family, everyone he'd fooled with his charm. I thought of my kids, Ethan and Sophie, sleeping soundly at home. I'd taught them to do what's right, even when it's hard. Now, I had to live up to that. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Where'd you go, Mike? Don't be a drama queen." I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the reply button. He didn't know I was onto him, didn't know the storm coming. I typed a single word, tomorrow, and hit send. Let him wonder. I stepped inside, the quiet of my house a stark contrast to the ballroom's chaos. I sank onto the couch. The email screenshot burned into my mind. Ryan's lies were unraveling, and I was the one pulling the thread. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of power, not anger, but purpose. Tomorrow, I'd walk back into that family and show them who I really was. When have you had to stand up for what's right, even when it hurt? I'd love to hear. The morning after the wedding, I woke to a quiet house, the weight of Aunt Karen's plan pressing against me. Ryan's $120,000 debt, his scheme to marry Emily for her family's money. It wasn't just a betrayal of me, but of everyone in that ballroom. I'd sent Karen the email from Ryan's creditor last night, my fingers trembling as I hit send. Today, at the post-wedding brunch, the truth would come out. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I was done hiding. The hotel's banquet hall was decked out in autumn hues, pumpkin centerpieces, warm lighting, a nod to Thanksgiving gatherings. Guests mingled over mimosas and pastries, their laughter a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I slipped in late, avoiding the main crowd, my eyes scanning for Karen. She stood near the buffet, her posture rigid, clutching her phone like a weapon. Our eyes met and she nodded, a signal we were going through with it. Ryan was at the center of the room, arm around Emily, charming the guests as always. But Emily's face was pale, her smile brittle, like she sensed the ground shifting. Her parents, George and Linda, sat at a nearby table, their expressions grim. I'd seen that look before, last night, when Linda's eyes had locked on Ryan with suspicion. They were waiting for something, and I had a feeling Karen was about to deliver. I stayed by the wall, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to stop this, to spare Emily the pain, to avoid the fallout with my parents. But Ryan's lies had gone too far. I thought of my kids, Ethan and Sophie, and how I'd want someone to protect them from a fraud like Ryan. That thought steadied me. Karen moved to the front, tapping a spoon against her glass. The room quieted, heads turning. "I have something to say," she began, her voice clear and unwavering. "Yesterday, Michael, my nephew, was treated like an outsider at his own brother's wedding, but that's not the worst of it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ryan's grin faltered, his arm dropping from Emily's shoulder. Karen held up her phone, projecting an email onto a screen behind her. "This is from a debt collector. Ryan owes $120,000, and this—" She swiped to a text from Ryan sent to a friend. "Emily's family's loaded. Once we're married, I'm set." Gasps filled the room. Emily froze, her eyes wide. Ryan lunged forward, voice cracking. "That's fake. Karen, what the hell?" "It's real," Karen said, unflinching. "Michael found the proof. Ryan's been planning to use Emily's money to clear his debts." She turned to Emily, softening. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. You deserve better." Emily's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling. George and Linda stood, faces like thunder. "Is this true?" George demanded, staring at Ryan. Ryan stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's not what it looks like. I love her. I swear." But Emily was already backing away, shaking her head. "You lied to me," she whispered, her voice breaking. She yanked off her engagement ring and dropped it on the table, the clink echoing in the silence. Linda stepped forward, her voice ice cold. "This wedding is over. You'll never see our daughter again." Vivian leaped up, clutching Ryan's arm. "You're ruining everything, Michael. Why can't you let him be happy?" Harold stayed seated, head bowed, saying nothing. I felt their blame like a physical weight, but I stood tall. "This isn't about happiness," I said, my voice steady. "It's about the truth." Ryan turned on me, eyes wild. "You did this! You've always been jealous!" His accusation stung, but I held his gaze. "You did this to yourself, Ryan." The room was chaos, guests whispering, Emily sobbing as her parents let her out, Ryan shouting denials. Karen stayed calm, her eyes locked on mine, a silent thank you. As the crowd dispersed, I felt a strange relief. I'd torn down Ryan's facade, not for revenge, but for Emily, for myself, for the honesty my family had never valued. I walked out, leaving their anger behind, knowing I'd face more tomorrow. But for now, I'd done what was right. When has the truth changed everything for you? I'd love to know. The hotel brunch's chaos lingered in my mind as I drove home. The image of Emily's ring hitting the table sharper than any sound from that day. Ryan's lies, his $120,000 debt, his plan to marry Emily for her family's money, had unraveled in front of everyone thanks to Aunt Karen and the truth I'd helped uncover. But the victory felt hollow. My mother's accusations, my father's silence, and Ryan's rage left a void I hadn't expected. I'd stood up for what was right, but at what cost? Back home, my house was quiet. Ethan and Sophie still at their grandparents' for the weekend. I sank onto the couch, staring at my phone. No calls, no texts, not from Ryan, not from my parents. The silence was louder than their blame yesterday. I replayed the brunch, Karen's steady voice, Emily's tears, Vivian's cry that I'd ruined everything. I'd wanted them to see me, to understand the years I'd carried their burdens. Instead, they'd turned me into the villain. I pulled out a photo from a drawer, me and Ryan as kids grinning at a lake, before debt and lies drove a wedge between us. I'd bailed him out so many times, $5,000 here, a car payment there, because that's what brothers do. But he'd never seen me as anything but a safety net, and my parents had let him. I set the photo down, my chest tight. I didn't want their apologies. I wanted to be free. Monday morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. "We need to talk. Come to the house tonight." No, please, no sorry. I almost ignored it, but something stopped me. Maybe it was Ethan and Sophie, who'd ask why we never saw Grandma anymore. Maybe it was the part of me that still hoped for something better. I replied, "Fine, 7 p.m. Work dragged, my mind elsewhere. Colleagues asked about the wedding, and I dodged with vague smiles. By evening, I was at my parents' house, the familiar porch light casting shadows. Vivian opened the door, her face drawn, no trace of her usual poise. Harold sat at the kitchen table, a beer in hand, eyes fixed on the wood grain. No Ryan. I braced myself. "Michael," Vivian started, her voice softer than I expected. "I've been thinking about what happened." I waited, arms crossed. She took a breath. "I was wrong to blame you. I didn't know about Ryan's debts, his plans. I should have listened to you." Her eyes welled up, but I stayed silent. I'd waited years for those words, but they didn't erase the hurt. Harold cleared his throat, finally looking at me. "We've always leaned on you, son. Too much. We thought Ryan needed us more, but we were wrong." His voice cracked, a rare glimpse of the man behind the silence. I wanted to believe them, but trust was a fragile thing. "Where's Ryan?" I asked. Vivian hesitated. "He left town, said he needed space. He's ashamed." I nodded, unsurprised. Ryan always ran when things got hard. I thought of Emily, her life upended because I'd pushed for the truth. I hoped she'd find peace, but I knew it'd take time. "Michael," Vivian said, reaching for my hand, "can we fix this?" I pulled back, not out of anger, but clarity. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I've spent my life fixing things for this family. I need to fix myself now." Harold's eyes dropped. Vivian's lips trembled, but they didn't argue. For the first time, they heard me. I left their house lighter, not because we'd reconciled, but because I'd drawn a line. Driving home, I thought of Aunt Karen. She'd called earlier, her voice proud. "You did good, Michael. You saved that girl." Her words were a balm, reminding me I wasn't alone. I'd always have her, and my kids, and maybe that was enough. Days later, a letter arrived, Emily's handwriting on the envelope. I opened it, heart pounding. "Michael, thank you for telling the truth. It hurt, but you gave me a chance to start over. I'm grateful." I folded the letter, a small smile breaking through. She'd be okay, and so would I. That weekend, I took Ethan and Sophie to the park, their laughter filling the air as we tossed a frisbee. Watching them, I felt a shift. I'd spent years defining myself by my family's needs, Ryan's debts, my parents' expectations. Now, I was choosing me, not out of selfishness, but survival. The park's golden light bathed us, a promise of new beginnings. I still thought of Ryan sometimes, wondering if he'd face his demons or keep running. I hoped he'd change, but that wasn't my burden anymore. My parents called occasionally, their voices tentative, and I answered, keeping the door cracked but not wide open. Trust would take time if it came at all. Sitting on my porch that night, a beer in hand, I looked at the stars. The wedding felt like a lifetime ago. Table 17, Ryan's lies, the brunch that broke us apart. I'd walked away not just from them, but from the version of me who'd settled for scraps. I was Michael, father, brother, man, not invisible, not anymore. When have you had to choose yourself over family? I'd love to hear. As I sat on my porch, stars above, I felt a quiet strength. Ryan was gone, maybe forever, but I'd found something better. Myself. Emily's letter lay folded in my pocket, proof that truth matters. My parents' calls were fewer, their voices softer, and I answered, but on my terms. Ethan and Sophie's laughter filled my days, grounding me. I'd spent years chasing my family's approval, only to learn I didn't need it. That wedding, table 17, Ryan's lies, the brunch that broke us, wasn't my end, but my beginning. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Michael, whole and free. Looking back, I realized life's toughest moments teach us who we are. I learned to stand tall, not for others, but for me. If you're feeling unseen, know this. Your worth isn't tied to anyone's approval. Choose yourself. It's not selfish, it's survival. To my fellow Americans, let's embrace honesty, even when it hurts, because it builds stronger families, stronger selves. What's a moment that made you choose you? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to connect. If it wasn't your vibe, share why. I'm all ears. If you felt something today, hit that subscribe button to catch more stories that spark the heart.